6-month-old Emma Sullivan lay motionless in her hospital bed, her paralyzed body betraying the curious eyes that tracked everything around her. After months of failed treatments for a rare spinal condition, her exhausted mother, Maria, dozed off in the nearby armchair, unaware that Cooper, the companion puppy casually suggested by Dr. Chen, had slipped past the baby gate. What Maria saw upon waking was unreal. Maria and John Sullivan had built a perfect life. Their home echoed with laughter, and the arrival of their daughter Emma 6 months ago had completed their family in ways they never imagined possible. Emma was bright and alert, her eyes following their movements across the room, her tiny hands reaching for toys, her infectious giggles filling their hearts with joy. Until that morning. Maria walked into the nursery as usual, cooing softly as she approached Emma's crib. The baby's eyes lit up at the sight of her mother, but something was wrong, terribly wrong. Maria reached down to lift her daughter, but Emma's body remained limp. Her bright eyes tracked Maria's movements, but her arms didn't rise for an embrace. Her legs didn't kick with excitement. She just lay there motionless, her body still and unresponsive, as if trapped in a world that no longer moved with her. Maria called out for John, panic rising in her voice. He rushed into the room, and they both watched in horror as their once active daughter lay still, only her eyes moving to follow their frantic faces. The emergency room was a blur of activity. Doctors rushed Emma through a battery of tests while Maria and John sat in the waiting room, clutching each other's hands. Hours later, a solemn-faced neurologist approached them. The doctor explained that Emma had developed a rare inflammatory condition affecting her spinal cord. The medical team would do everything possible, but they needed to prepare for the possibility that the paralysis might be permanent. The words crashed over the Sullivans like a tidal wave, sweeping away the future they had imagined for their daughter. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The Sullivan home transformed into a medical space with a special hospital bed for Emma, monitoring equipment, and specialists walking in and out at will. Various treatments were attempted, medications, physical therapy, experimental procedures, but Emma's condition remained unchanged. Her body stayed motionless while her mind remained active behind those curious eyes that never stopped watching. During one particularly difficult appointment, Dr. Chen, Emma's neurologist, reviewed the latest test results with a furrowed brow. Maria had been holding herself together for months, but that day something inside her broke. She began to sob, admitting her deepest fear was seeing Emma just lying there, all alone with her thoughts. The idea of her baby trapped in her own mind, unable to reach for comfort, unable to play or explore, was unbearable. Dr. Chen looked up from her charts with a thoughtful expression. She asked casually if the Sullivans had considered getting a pet, perhaps a puppy around Emma's age. Her question left Maria confused, but Dr. Chen clarified that since she is worried about Emma being all by herself when they are busy, it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to get her a little companion. With an active puppy in her corner, running around and playing, Emma would have company, and they won't have to worry that she is always by herself when they are busy handling other things that matter to them. The idea took root. John and Maria discussed it for days. Weeks later, they visited a local animal shelter. They weren't sure what they were looking for until they saw him, a golden retriever puppy with soulful eyes that seemed to lock onto John immediately. The shelter worker explained that the puppy, about 3 months old, had been rescued from an abandoned property. Despite his rough start, he was healthy and remarkably gentle for his age. John and Maria decided to name him Cooper, and they took him home that afternoon. John installed a baby gate to keep Cooper separated from Emma's special medical setup, but Cooper seemed to understand the gravity of the situation from the start. He rarely attempted to breach the gate boundary, but often sat beside it, watching Emma with the same attentive curiosity that she watched him. The Sullivans soon found themselves narrating Cooper's antics to Emma throughout the day. For the first time in months, their one-sided conversations with Emma felt natural and filled with joy rather than forced cheerfulness hiding heartbreak. One night, after a particularly difficult day of doctor appointments, Maria stayed up late with Emma, who was having trouble sleeping. Around dawn, exhaustion finally overcame Maria, and she dozed off in the armchair near Emma's bed. Cooper had been curled up by the baby gate as usual, Hours later, Maria woke with a start. She immediately looked toward Emma's bed to check on her daughter, and froze. Cooper had somehow squeezed past the gate. He was curled up next to Emma's bed, his head resting near her blanket. But what made Maria's heart nearly stop was what she saw next. Emma's supposedly paralyzed hand was extended outside her blanket. Her tiny fingers were resting on Cooper's fur. Maria sat perfectly still, afraid to breathe. Then she saw it. Emma's fingers twitched. They moved deliberately, stroking the sleeping puppy's ear. Maria screamed for John. He rushed into the room. Together they watched in disbelief as Emma's fingers flexed again, deliberately petting Cooper, who had woken up and was gently nuzzling against her hand. With shaking hands, Maria picked up her phone to record a video, while John called Dr. Chen. The neurologist arrived within hours, skepticism evident in her expression until she witnessed it herself. Under her observation, Cooper approached Emma, and once more her supposedly paralyzed hand responded. Dr. Chen immediately conducted a clinical examination. By all measurable standards, Emma's paralysis remained present. Her reflexes didn't respond to the doctor's tests. When stimuli were applied directly to her limbs, there was no reaction. Yet somehow, when Cooper comes close to her, she demonstrates movements that should have been medically impossible. Over the following weeks, Emma's movements became more frequent and increasingly controlled, but they remained dependent on Cooper's presence. When the puppy was taken to another room, her abilities vanished. When he returned, her movement returned as well. The medical team documented everything meticulously. Specialists from across the country came to witness the phenomenon, each leaving with more questions than answers. Was it an unprecedented form of neuroplasticity? A psychological response creating physical outcomes? Something about the texture of the fur triggering dormant neural pathways? For the Sullivans, the explanation mattered far less than the results. Their daughter was responding, moving, and interacting in ways they had been told would be impossible. They watched in tearful joy as Emma and Cooper grew together, the puppy intuitively staying close to his small human as he knows his importance in her life and health. What began as a casual suggestion for a companion by Dr. Chen had turned into a medical mystery that none of the experts could explain. A puppy, meant only to provide company for a lonely, paralyzed child, had somehow become the key that unlocked movements to her motionless body. 6 months after Cooper joined John and Maria's family, Emma could move her arms consistently in his presence. By her second birthday, she could grasp toys when Cooper was nearby. The doctors remained baffled, continuing to document her progress while admitting they had no scientific explanation for her improvements. The Sullivans didn't need science to explain what they witnessed every day. The powerful connection between their daughter and her furry companion, a bond that somehow bridged the gap between medical impossibility and witnessed reality. And as for Cooper, he seemed to understand his mission in life was to stay by Emma's side, offering her not just companionship, but a pathway to movements that defied medical explanation and gave hope where there had been none. Have you witnessed something like this before? What would you do if you witnessed something medical science couldn't explain? Would you search for answers or simply embrace the miracle just like the Sullivans did?